Hi everyone, I'm Shane. I'm going to get feedback from the speaker. There we go. I'm a co-founder of IrisVR. My other co-founder is standing around here somewhere, Nate Beatty. And we started Iris about a year and a half ago. And I'm going to start just by giving a quick background on my background and what I studied and what I worked on in the past, because it'll give a lot of context for what Iris became and what we're doing with virtual reality. So I studied architecture up in Vermont in Middlebury College, and worked at a variety of firms, some modern, like SAS architects in Burlington, some ultra-modern and like critical regionalist, obeying the land, thinking about space, some more traditional. These guys were doing prefab homes. They had a heavy focus on technology and how to panelize houses using tools like Revit and AutoCAD 3D. And then some of my own projects, both at Middlebury, and then once I graduated, I realized that what most of these architecture firms were actually hiring me for was my technical knowledge, specifically with 3D modeling, with visualization. Taking 3D models of houses and making them look good for clients was actually what most architects, it's pretty much the only thing they'll spend money on, is images like this. So I called this company Lightwell. This was a small little consulting gig. And Nate was actually helping me do some of the back-end work. We were working together on it. And Lightwell was at a really good time because it allowed me to dive really deeply into what technology was out there for 3D. And it was very clear that we had this division between CAD tools like Sketchup and Vectorworks and Revit, and 3D modeling tools for professional industry, and then game engines. And what a lot of people in this room are familiar with, like Unity and Unreal and CryEngine. But what was happening when I was doing Lightwell, I mean this wasn't too long ago, this was 2013, is a whole industry-wide gamification. So these traditional CAD tools adopting game engines and adopting gaming technology to create more interactive CAD files. And so I put a whole bunch of the companies up here. Lumien's really been killing it. They're pretty much doing Sims for professionals. There are guys like Florid down in New York doing WebGL walkthroughs of real estate spaces. Blender rolled in their game engine. Autodesk has Navisworks, which creates navigable 3D environments from other 3D modeling tools like Revit and the like. And they're successful. And so more and more of these companies are adopting gamification. What also happened is, it's actually ironic that I have what also Paracosm was talking about up here. There was the rise of what we're calling spatial technology, things that are no longer looking at devices as 2D news feeds. You know, your phone is just a two-dimensional X and Z, for example. But suddenly, this release of all of these really consumer devices that can scan your space, like Tango, Magic Leap, we're still kind of figuring out what they're doing, but it looks like augmented reality. Structure sensor at the bottom, and of course the Oculus Rift. All of these devices that try to look at what is the 3D world and how do our personal devices interact with it. And so I'm doing Lightwell, and I'm working with architects, and if you Google architect, this is the first image that shows up, and it always gets to me because we're at this point now with technology. We have handheld devices that can measure 3D space and show it. And still the traditional perception of people that design our space and people that work on every single thing that's built in the world are viewed this way. They're looking at a two-dimensional plane and they are designing in it. And you know where I'm going with this. VR was such an obvious application in my mind for this whole design world and this whole built environment world to actually bridge the gap into their designing spaces. How about they do it in a spatially realistic way? And VR, of course, creates that experience. Most of us in here have tried VR. If you haven't, go to one of these demo stations right after and put them on immediately. And the promised land is that you really forget that you're sitting in this room next to pizza and people, and you're in a virtual environment somewhere, and your brain makes that flip, and you really feel like you're there. And as great as it is for gaming, we saw just amazing potential for professionals in the design world to use this with their clients and use this in their own design work. So that was the idea. And that was about 1.5 years ago, which was probably about 6 months too early, because that was before Facebook acquired Oculus. And we were, if anyone started a VR company 1.5 years ago, you're probably nodding your heads. We were the crazy guys in the room bringing Oculus Rifts around to meetings. But what was surprising is we used our design and architecture network and found very quickly that we would go into a 20-person architecture firm, and pretty immediately they'd say like, oh, we have XYZ client that doesn't understand their kitchen layout, or they don't understand the hospital wing we're redesigning. Like, can we pay you guys to do this for us? We said, oh, this sounds like a company. And so we started actually taking it seriously, is how do we enable virtual reality technology for design professionals and building professionals? And what we found is, this is a process that probably a lot of people in this room have gone through, there's a huge hang-up with any sort of professional industry to make VR content. And it pretty much comes down to what I talked about at the beginning with the industry gamification. You have traditional CAD tools, and they just don't work in video game engines. You have to have some bridge. And if you don't, you have to do this process, which is laborious. You usually end up in some 3D mesh editor, like 3ds Max, which allows you to really dig into a three-dimensional file and do a lot of optimization, pretty much prepare it in a lot of different ways to work in a game engine. And as you can imagine, this list of things is a skill set that designers and professionals just don't have. And they will hire interns to do it, they will hire others to do it. But as an example, we got a Margaritaville to do really early in the company, and it took me about 200 hours to do this process. And now, I don't know, after doing it a couple times, I could probably do it in 150 hours. But it's just an insane amount of data that you have to bring into VR, and it just doesn't work very easily. So looking at this list, we saw that all these things in bold, which you don't have to read, it's just the vast majority, probably about 80% of the steps, could be automated. It's everything from batching geometry or running mesh compression. A lot of this stuff, if you teach the computer how to do it in a smart way, you can automate that process and actually create a 3D to VR interface that might actually be designer friendly and like industry professional friendly. So then, after about 1 year, what we created was this standalone desktop app, and this is our alpha. We call it our beta because more people understand what that means. But it's really the idea being that there's a way to create VR experiences that is pretty much invisible to a professional workflow. If you're designing in 3D, we want you to be able to, as you're designing, creating a building model, take it, drag it and drop it into our software, and then have it show up in VR. And have that be pretty instantaneous, and really have it not interrupt your workflow. Because what that enables is, if you can do it without really thinking about it, you can actually start looking at properties of space and interacting with clients in that space. And of course, it caters to non-technical. So that's the intro spiel. I'm going to give you guys some live demos. I set up this stool so I could hopefully do it in a... all right, great.
You got that cord caught in the mic.
Perfect. I won't pull it out any farther.
We're not making it easy on you tonight.
Yeah, it's good. It's stretch. All right, so the first thing I'll do is, this is SketchUp, so this is a standard 3D modeling tool, mainly used in like schematic design. I used it a lot in Vermont when we were doing modeling. I figured this would be fun. This is my apartment I just moved into in New York City. And the idea being, if you're in a design firm, you look at a lot of these models. They're pretty unfinished. They don't really look like much on the screen, but you're using it to test out space, and you're using it to test configuration of things. And just to show that this isn't pre-baked, I don't know, I'll add a really beautiful cube right in the middle. There, that's my apartment. All right. And then, yeah, that would be a good time for the computer to freeze. And I'll boot up our alpha and beta app. And the idea being, you take that file that I just saved, drag it into our software, click launch, and instead of having to go through that laundry list of items, we're processing it. We're pulling out, so what's happening right now is we're reading that 3D data, we're pulling it out, we're putting it into our own file type, and then you guys will notice this is Unity. So we're loading it into Unity pretty much on the fly. We chose Unity for a lot of reasons I can dig into in Q&A, but the short answer is, as a small company, we didn't really want to write our own game engine to start. And so you saw that was about 20 seconds for I mean, let's call that, I can check how many polygons, but I think that was about like 100,000 polygons, and we're in. And so, even though it's schematic, and even though like there's certainly a lot left to do, we're finding that this level of schematic, of really rough view still works in virtual reality to a point where you can get an idea of the space. It doesn't matter that the roof's not on. It doesn't matter that the windows are just rough openings. Like, it's amazing how when you're in virtual reality, the sense of space is really the all-encompassing property. And so what we found today is people are actually using this with their clients and in their design workflows to actually start iterating through space. And we can do a couple fancy things, like because we're in Unity and because we're doing real-time lighting, we can change, for example, sun position. I'm just hitting 9 and 0. We can pull up, let's see if the GUI is going to behave at this resolution. We can pull up our GUI. You can see on this poor MacBook Pro, we're getting about 30 frames a second. That's not good for VR. We need it at 75. So a lot of the work we're still doing, and a lot of the more technical stuff, is how to increase that frame rate on a machine that's got a 750M graphics card. And we can even pull in, and this is where it gets really, really exciting for me, is as a designer and as someone using these 3D softwares, we're pulling in native file formats, so like a native SketchUp file or a native Revit file. We get all the data associated with that geometry. So you don't just get plain geometry and textures. You can get layers, you can get scenes. In Revit, there's something called views. You can select different views and just load in the geometry in each of those. So we get a lot of the associated data that comes with it. So like this, I don't have any layers added to this. But if I did, I do. They would show up here. So you can toggle those on and off and such. So that's where we are today, and that's sort of the live demo of what we've built to date. And we have 365 users as of a screenshot a couple hours ago, and this has been the biggest thing this spring. Is we decided to create a closed beta, so we opened this up to the public. You can tell we got 1,400 applicants. We're going through each of those by hand. I know Reddit's pretty angry at us because we're taking our sweet time getting access codes out. But we're reviewing applicants and we're getting people set up that have an Oculus Rift or another compatible device and are using SketchUp or one of our supported softwares. And what's happened with these 365 users is we've seen really 3 use cases come out of it. And these are, if I was talking to a room full of investors, I would say we knew this beforehand, but we had no idea if people were going to use this. Because it's VR, it's brand new, and it's like, there's so many questions to be asked about if VR, strapping goggles to your face, will be used in professional workflows. No idea. They are, and people are really liking it. So the big one that sells firms, like if we're going into a construction firm or an architecture firm, the client walkthrough, the one on the left, like that is the big selling point. We say, hey, you have a client that maybe you're competing against other firms, you want to have the leg up, you want them to understand what they're getting, use Iris to quickly iterate through a couple spaces and have them understand what they're getting. People like that. The more surprising use cases that we've seen actually get us more recurring usage are internal coordination. So if you are building this building, you probably interface with about 1,000 people. It really helps if those 1,000 people can walk through the design first and understand what they're doing. You save real money by essentially reducing change orders and what needs to happen after the building's built. And then the one that gets me really excited is actually using Iris for design. And this is the designers in the room that are modeling in SketchUp or modeling in Revit or any of these tools and want to test out what a 9-foot ceiling feels like versus a 10-foot 6 ceiling. You really can't, even in a 3D model on your computer, that is really hard to understand. And as a result, the 70-year-old designers usually are worshipped at the firms because they can draw something on a piece of paper and that is inherently understood in their minds because they've done it enough. What VR really enables is a true understanding of space, even as you're like sort of getting a sense of what 3D modeling is and what this space feels like. And what was also surprising to us and has been one of the reasons we're still around is we've seen that where I started in architecture was really the first industry, but all 9 of these industries are using 3D modeling, which means that they're all primed for VR as well. Construction's been huge for us and engineering as well. But even more surprisingly, we've seen film and stage designers interfacing with directors and producers, and especially like set design and stage design. There's huge applications, and I know there are probably people in this room that have worked on VR for film and for stage. There's a lot of 3D work there that can be visualized quickly in VR. And then sort of the future stuff, and then I'll open it up to questions. We know right now we have pretty much a quick converter into VR, and what it did is it served as a proof of concept. It gave us some use cases. It showed that people were starting to use it, but that's like by no means where we really want to end. We see a huge ton of potential in the mobile market that's really emerged surprisingly before the PC-based market. So like Gear VR, even cardboard. I'm known as someone who is opposed generally to cardboard, but I'm starting to see the light. It's like a quick experience that you can put on someone for 3 seconds. They can understand the space. So we know that because we're using Unity, we can publish to Android, and we're looking at how we slice up data enough to get mobile experiences running smoothly. And if you upload a hospital that is 30 million polygons, how do you pull out just enough data to be able to walk through it in a mobile device without making your iPhone explode? Another really big one, you saw in my demo, it was schematic. It looked like hard lighting and the textures were sort of plain. We see beautification is going to be a really big deal. And how do you do realistic lighting in a quick way? And how do you load in, like if a material is bumpy or has reflectiveness, how do you create a drag and drop application that can load in some of those features? And then the really fun stuff like interactivity and multiplayer, I will just show. This is a video from a presentation we just gave. This is also sort of beautified and faked for investors, but this is a screen capture of what we were doing, so I'll sort of scrub through this. Pause. So, go back. Being able to tag different elements and then hitting a key binding to make, oops, that's not it. Being able to hit a key binding to actually have colors change and textures change, we're seeing is something that a lot of interior designers and real estate people are asking for. So color changing. Also, using wireless input devices. I think we have a couple here, but like the Nod and the Myo armband, what these allow you to do is suddenly your hand's being tracked in VR. And that allows for interactivity. If you mark something as static, you can change the chair location, or even raise and lower the ceiling height if you build the model correctly. And it really opens up a lot of possibilities for iterating on your space you're working on actually inside virtual reality. And then the last one that anyone that's working in Unity knows is actually fairly, I mean, says the designer, but it's fairly simple to implement, is multiplayer. So this sphere is someone else walking through the space, and not only is it a blast, you can sort of see where the other person is walking. It allows us to have something along the lines of an architectural walkthrough before a building is built, which is something that can't be done right now, and gaming and VR allows that and enables that. That's the future vision. I think that's a good place for me to open up questions. I sort of have a lot more I could talk about, but it maybe makes more sense just to just open up to questions and answer those. So thank you. We'll give a little product demo of at the Boston Virtual Reality Meetup. So starting with a blank SketchUp file, just to show this whole process, let's assume you're going to make a really basic house. Super basic. There's your ground. Let's model with best practices. All right, that's our ground plane. Let's give it a texture just to show that textures work. That looks like some nice grass. All right, and then here's our house. Let's say it's 25 feet by 46 feet because I like that size house. Let's give it some walls that are 8 inches. Okay, house is almost done. I'm doing all this just to show sort of the whole process from creation of 3D file into VR using Iris. So there is our walls. Let's give it a door. That looks like a pretty good door. Big bay windows. There we go. Almost done. I highly recommend learning SketchUp. It's a great tool. All right, so there's our beautiful house. We won't even put a roof on. We will put a flamingo lawn ornament that is a cube and make it tall so you get a sense of height. All right, and let's make this wall brown.
It almost looks like a chimney.
It's gonna be beautiful. All right, and we're done. I'll also make sure this ground plane's a little bigger so we, there we go. All right, so we'll save this. This is your beautiful architectural file you've been working on for months. And now using Iris, before you'd have to do this all by hand to bring it into VR, but now you can take existing 3D CAD files, open up our beta app, and drag and drop that file into our software and click launch, and then you're good to go. So it'll show up in VR. You can strap these guys on, make the warning go away. I'll pass you the controller too, and the triggers will fly you so you can get a bird's eye view as well.
Oh, cool.
But so it came in. There's the project, and so that's sort of the value proposition too. Is like that looks like nothing, but it's whatever you create. So if you're creating a really fully fledged model, or you're creating new content, you can view it very quickly in VR. You know, this is what I can do in 3 seconds, but it does. You get a sense of the height of it. You get a sense of how that would feel. It probably feels like some walls in a field, which is what it is. But that's the beauty of VR. Is
that conversion was really fast.
Yeah, and it's totally dependent on polygon count. So like this is probably, well, each face is 2 triangles, so you can figure there's probably only about 100 polygons in this whole file. So that should be pretty much instantaneous. It gets fancier when we have like 1,000,000 polygons. That processing time right now takes about 5 to 10 minutes. We want to get that down to seconds. So that's a lot of our own tech, is how we slice up a file and process it.
Is it possible to manipulate the building while in VR as well, like build it in?
Yeah, so not yet. What we're working on ways to flag different elements and mark them as movable. So then if you have some sort of input device, you can actually move things around.
Like change the height of things. Or, yeah, that'd be really amazing.
The easiest thing to do is, you saw when I was modeling it, like I made the ground its own element, I made the walls their own element, I grouped them. It'd be easy to select different groups and essentially mark which ones are movable. So if you made the ceiling and the roof a group, you could move those up and down. A lot of our GUI, I think you're probably finding, is in beta. But
is that the player height?
Yeah,
that's cool.
And
oh yeah,
is it moving at all? Oh yeah, it is moving.
Yeah.
Good, it works. Oh my god. Yeah, that's been a challenge. So good, the height works. Yeah, that's like huge. Getting the height actually within an inch. I mean, you wouldn't be surprised that I'm 5'11", if I walk through at 5'9", it actually doesn't feel good. Like if you're 2 inches off in any direction, it sort of screws up the perception. So I'm Shane Scranton, the CEO of IrisVR. And we're building a suite of products to help edit, share, and visualize 3D models in virtual reality. So what that means is, if you have a 3D model like SketchUp or Revit or 3ds Max, having the ability to very quickly drag and drop that file into our software and then instantaneously view it in virtual reality. What that allows you to do is pretty quickly walk through a space, but then also use it with a client to be able to show design options, or to use it with your firm to collaborate on ideas, or to even use it in your own design workflow to test out different spaces. We're in closed beta right now. It's really early in VR, so we're looking for good early testers. But coming down the line, hopefully around September or October, November, we'll be doing our 1.0 release.
So where is the company actually located?
So we started the company in Vermont. However, in the last 3 months, we've been back and forth to New York City, and as of last week, we have fully moved the company to New York.
Wow, so New York City, what makes that area the perfect area for your company?
So we're doing enterprise sales, and mainly among designers and construction and engineering, and it's just the hub. I mean, New York is the hub of the world for all enterprise customers. So our office is within walking distance of most customers, and it makes a lot of sense for us to develop our relationships there.
All right, so Is there any other technology out there that's similar to your technology? And if so, what makes yours different?
There's a lot of, well, there didn't used to be. So we were definitely the first about a year ago. Since then, there's cropped up a number of existing companies that have now started offering VR with their product offering. And there are a couple of competitors that are doing VR first as well. We are different in a couple different ways from a lot of these guys. The VR first companies, most of them are web-based VR companies. We're doing it locally because we think that provides more comfort. And then a lot of the companies that are using VR as a product offering are still developing their current screen-based feature set. And as a result, we do like to believe that we're the only VR first company doing desktop applications.
So when you say desktop applications, describe for the viewers what makes that different from web-based applications.
So web-based means it's running in Chrome or Firefox, and you boot up your browser and go to a URL and it shows the image and you can view it on like a cardboard or on a mobile device. The difference is with us, you're launching it from your computer, so it's not going through a web browser, and the result is you get a higher fidelity experience and it's more comfortable.
All right, so does that allow you to have more users because it's going to be on the desktop, or to have a better quality product? Tell us why that's a better option.
So it probably will result in us having fewer users, but those users will be more comfortable and have a higher quality experience.
All right, great. So do you have anything that you want to tell us that we didn't hear from your presentation, which was awesome, by the way?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you can download our beta. If you go to IrisVR.com and want to test out our software, you can put your name into the sign-up field, and we're screening all the applicants, and we'll get back to you shortly.
All right, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for presenting to our meetup, and this is pretty awesome software.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks.
I appreciate it.